Are you a real estate investor looking to sharpen your skills or a newbie looking to become one? You're in the right place. Welcome to Where Should I Invest? Real Estate Investing in Canada with your host, Sarah Larbi.
Shawn Quigg, welcome to the show. How are you?
Sarah, I'm awesome. Thanks for having me on.
I'm excited to have you. We've worked together in the past. You were working on some JV agreements for me to utilize and prior, and you've got a lot of new, fun, exciting things recently, which I'm sure we'll dive into quite a bit. But let's start with like a quick 30,000-foot view. You know who you are. I know you're also an investor. You're a lawyer. Maybe give us some tidbit on that.
Okay, sure. Well, I've been a real estate investor since I went to law school all the way back in 2015. Started investing completely by accident. I bought a house. I was leaving a job. I had a job with the federal government, and I was basically, a salary employee. And then I went to nothing. So what I thought I would do is buy a house and rent out some of the rooms to other law students. And so I didn't realize house hacking was a strategy that you could do. And all of a sudden, within a couple of months, I was cash flowing. I thought, hey, this is pretty good. I can afford beer, which is a must-have for law school. And I was living for free. And I didn't even realize the equity I was building or the mortgage pay down that was happening. I just thought this was a way to make sure that I could have that beer to get me through law school. And so it wasn't long before I was cash flowing, and all of a sudden I started thinking, hey, this is probably a good idea to keep going on. So what did I do? I bought another student rental. This time I learned my lesson. I bought way close to the school, way bigger house, used my, don't tell anyone, my professional student line of credit to put the down payment down. And so I bought that second house completely 100% debt. And I just sold it. I've owned it since then. Cash flowed it. Had to change strategies in the pandemic to an Airbnb, and it treated me very well. And so that really what got me going on the real estate investing journey. Mm-hmm. And then it sort of snowballed from there into flips and multifamilies, and then into sort of pairing my profession as a lawyer with my interests in real estate investing.
Very cool. I was just actually reading today that there's about over 800,000 international students coming. It's crazy. And just to go back to, the student rental market, I think before the pandemic was in some markets, not every market, but in some market it was getting quite saturated. And throughout the pandemic, like you said, you had to pivot to different strategies. But I think, a lot of students left, obviously, and now they're back and they don't have a lot of places because everybody pivoted, whether it goes to long-term regular tenants, they sold or they're doing something different. And that happened a lot. And now I think the student rental is going to be prime for, that next chapter of making some money. But it is interesting that you also pivoted to some short-term midterm stuff, because you're also our go-to lawyer for all our midterm rental business and properties, and you help our students and our investors with that as well, which is pretty cool. So then you amalgamated real estate investing and your law firm. So maybe just talk about your law firm, what it is, what you guys do specifically, how it all ties in together.
Sure. Well, the law firm's called Prosper Us. And I chose that name for a couple of reasons. Number one, I wanted to note that, well, first of all, we're a law firm only for real estate investors, which is really where it starts. We don't do anything else. If a client comes in who's not a real estate investor, we introduce them to some of our industry colleagues, and that's so that we can focus and produce content and material and education and value for people that are real estate investors or in related industries, mortgage brokers, appraisers, that sort of thing. And so Prosper Us's name really came from this idea that really, as a real estate investor, your goal, my goal, everyone's goal really is to build prosperity and generational wealth. So I wanted to work within that framework. And then, we sort of put the accent on us to denote that teamwork mentality, right? We're not in this for us. We have our firm has a just cause, this ideal that we are pursuing every day, and it's along the lines of constructing a prosperous world, or helping to do so, where people can provide for the families and be free to do what they want to do. And so that takes a team approach, as you and I both know, and so that's really what caused the creation of Prosperous Law. And in terms of what we do, we help on all sorts of transactions, everything down, starting at a wholesale deal to CMHC refinancing on a massive building, which we just helped on a couple of weeks ago. Private lending, joint venture structuring and contracts, corporate structuring. We're helping with cross-border investing. We're helping with midterm and short-term rental work. And to be at the firm, you have to either be a real estate investor, to work at the firm, you have to be a real estate investor, or you have to be educated in real estate investing strategies, so that we can speak the same language. That's what I found in my time working with investors, is the value is not in so much in the law, because there's a lot of real estate lawyers out there and a lot of them do a great job. It's in having those good, sound business conversations and being able to add that insight. So that's where we, were born from, and that's what we're here to do. And so far it's been awesome.
Yeah, no, that's really important, because, just like realtors, just like mortgage brokers, and probably a lot of people in the industry, there are some that cater to the regular homeowner, which is totally fine. But as soon as you get into investing, and as soon as you get into more complex things, you really do have to have that expert on your team that is well versed in it. Because for example, like a lawyer may help you for your regular transaction, but all of a sudden you want to lend or borrow private money, or you want to create some joint venture agreements, or you've got to figure out this whole CMHC multifamily piece, and that's different, and you're probably going to close with a corporation. So there's so many moving parts that it is important that you find, whether it's a lawyer, mortgage broker, whoever it is, somebody that specializes in that, so that you don't have to replace your team down the road, right? Because, ultimately, if I look back, when I first started, in my first investment property, like I didn't even know what I didn't know. So, our lawyer is, amazing. He was great, but again, you've got to evolve, because once you start doing some more complex things, it doesn't quite fit in there. Same thing with our mortgage broker. Actually, we were going to the bank, and that bank was not like super like investor friendly. Realtors, same thing. Like we just speak such a different language that, whether you have experience or you're starting out, it's just important to have those experts on your team that can really, have your best interests for scaling, for growth, risk mitigation, because that's also a piece of it as well. So, it's great. So you do have a special title, I hear.
Yes, Chief Value Officer.
So tell us about that.
Okay. So, first of all, I don't call myself a lawyer anymore. And that's generally because I've stepped away from practicing for the most part. I've hired a lawyer to work at the firm who's much better at this than I am. And that was really for two reasons. Number one, traditionally lawyers would work all day, bill all day, right? And then try and, create value at nighttime, and really causes burnout. And as a result, that ability to provide really great service and create deep, meaningful connections suffers. And so my idea was to separate the role of value creation from closing deals. And so that's why I've largely stepped away from practicing. I advise, I talk strategy, and then once we're set to go, we bring in the rest of the team, and they sort of get you to the finish line and over it. But the title Chief Value Officer is largely born out of the fact that that's what I want to do. That's what the firm is for. It is to create value, either for clients or for my staff. And so what that looks like is, I'm writing a daily email where I'm providing legal tips, or reviews of transactions, or some sort of FAQ, or entrepreneurial mindset. We're creating social media content to really teach and educate. I'm doing podcasts. I'm sort of doing other educational outreach, and really trying to help people understand how to grow and scale responsibly. And so that's really what it comes down to. How can I make the lives of others more informed, easier? How can I make the process of working with a law firm easier, with less friction, with, make it easier and sort of take the focus away from some of the non-value components, take them on ourselves, and really deliver an awesome product in the end.
Mhm.
And that's really what it came down from.
Yeah, no, that is awesome. So, I mean, obviously, I know you guys are growing quickly. What are some of the challenges that you're seeing investors come to you with? I mean, obviously, we're in 2023 right now. The economy is quite unstable. This government's questionable. We've got, high interest rates. We've got people that, I mean, as I'm assuming you're practicing in all of Ontario. We've got, landlord tenant laws that are quite difficult to maneuver against. I think a lot of maybe investors that are not quite sure what to do next, what their next best move is. What are the challenges that you're seeing on your end?
Well, largely it has to do with economics. And, we're seeing people playing a lot of defense right now, selling for less than they want to, trying to refinance out money where loans have been called. Private lenders are starting to tighten up as well. And so that, that comes across in two ways, largely. Number one, they're not renewing, right? So they want to get paid back and they might be taking a step back. Or number two, they're less inclined to lend. And so I'm seeing a lot of clients sell when they ordinarily wouldn't. I'm seeing those sales result in the client having to put money in order to be able to close, which, never happened prior to, 12, 18 months ago. Never, ever happened unless you really screwed up. But now, you've paid for your renos, you've done all of that, and then you still got to put 20 or 30,000 in just to be able to close. Like that's painful. I'm seeing a lot of refinancing from one private to another, which is also traditionally not something we would see. That's not really how the burn model is supposed to work, but it sometimes renovations are taking longer. People are struggling to find crews that, construction crews that stay together. And so, a 6 month renovation is now taking 8, 10, 12 months. And so I'm seeing refinances into private money, and I'm seeing private lenders decline. I'm seeing people having a harder time borrowing. And so, that really means we've, as a team, got to step up and start finding other sources of capital. We're connecting with lenders and mortgage brokers almost daily to try and really create that pool, so that if we have clients coming to us, we can say, hey, here's 5 people to go talk to, or put a deal out to our list and see who might be interested.
Yeah, no, that's great that you have, different arms of the business to be able to, bring some solutions and bring some options. What about, like, I'm just curious, like, what you're seeing on your end from a legal standpoint with a lot of the, I mean, flips is one thing, and we talked about burrs, and obviously a lot of people are, having to refinance with a private lender for the time being, as rates are quite high. They may not qualify. But pre-construction was always a bit of a, red flag to me, because it's more speculative, and when the market's great, sure, whatever. But like, a lot of people bought because they wanted to sign these contracts, or a lot of people bought that were stress test at one level and didn't go through RBC to get locked in, and now they're trying to qualify. So I'm just curious, from a, what you're seeing on your desk from a pre-construction standpoint, what does that look like?
Well, there's 2 parts to this answer. Number one is most of my clients don't touch pre-con.
That's I will say that's good. That's a good thing. I'm glad to hear that.
Yeah.
Because
So
you'll probably talk them out of it.
yeah, we haven't been open for too long, but we have been open for a while. I have not seen one single pre-con come in. And I think that is largely because most investors in the know don't touch it, for exactly the reason you said, which is it's speculative. It's not cash flow, right? Nothing's guaranteed ever in investing, but it's not predictable. You're really gambling. And so I don't really see it all that much. But I can tell you personally that, as I was learning, I invested in a pre-con. And that final closing, we hit occupancy in May, and the carrying costs on that condo are gigantic, like 80% more than they were expected to be when I first bought it, when I was actually going to move into it, unless the spread was so large and then we just assign it. And final closing's coming up, thank goodness, so that we can get on MLS and get it sold and move on. But yeah, the pre-con world, it's tough. There's more, on the legal side, contracts are getting more difficult. I have seen plenty of pre-con in my time as a lawyer, and contracts are getting harder to negotiate with builders on. Builders, like, they have so much bargaining power, they don't really care. They'll just tell you what they want. Like on my deal in particular, if you send a wire, which is traditional, right, to close, or you wire the money to the builder's lawyer. If you send a wire, there's an admin fee of $500 instead of a certified check by courier. And this is just like, this is the builder knowing that no one wants to do certified checks, and so they're just adding. And I know $500 is not that much, but that's what it's coming to. And you've probably read the articles. Builders just walking away because little old you and me buying one unit in a condo, we have no bargaining power, and we're probably not going to sue the builder. And even if we did, the tear-on legislation sort of helps the builder out. So yeah, it's a tough investment. I think that's way more of a retail type investment.
I think so. I think it's when people are like looking at the deposit structure and they're like, oh, I don't have to pay much for like X amount of years, and that time comes at some point, and reality will hit at some point. So okay, so you've got that piece. Can we talk about, I think you have another really cool, interesting business as well. I don't know if are we able to talk about it?
Yeah,
Okay.
it's live and going, and so you're referring to Upfront Capital. So Upfront Capital,
so let's talk about that.
Yeah, it is a deposit lender. So what we do is we lend the deposit on a conditional agreement of purchase and sale during the conditional period. And what this does is it frees up investor capital to actually perform due diligence. So largely we would see this product used for development deals, because the cost of due diligence on a development deal is pretty high, right? Anyone who's listening who's done a development project knows you've got surveys, you've got potentially geotechnical, environmental, you've got architects, you've got consultants. It can get pretty hefty. And that conditional period, no one wants to put money into trust, right? No investor wants to, because there's a 0% return on investment, which, in any inflationary market, but especially today, is a loss. And so we do it. So we lend it. There's no mortgage. We can close pretty quickly. We closed the deal on Friday. That took 3 days to bring in, do due diligence on, and then fund. And that could have been pared down by probably a day and a half. If the borrower had come to us sort of before signing their agreement of purchase and sale. We work with borrowers to help them draft the agreement so that it meets their requirements, and then it's pretty quick from there.
Okay, so just to wrap my brain around the concept. So, I mean, and I'm assuming these aren't for like maybe they are for small residential. These are like usually like your commercial types of properties, your development deals, where you're going to have, maybe a deposit of $100,000 or more. Is that roughly what you're looking at? Okay. So then you've got those. So you fund the deposit, and then on closing, when do you get paid back?
When you go to firm up. So, during that due diligence phase, whether it's 30, 60, 90, 120 days, however long it is, you as the borrower / investor are doing two things. Number one, you are doing your due diligence. Is this a deal or not? Do we want to take this on? And it doesn't matter if it's a development deal or commercial multifamily or an industrial warehouse, right? You do that due diligence. The second thing you're doing is you're raising your investor capital. Once you're ready to go firm, you should have raised enough investor capital to be able to pay back the loan. So what do? You pay it back, you firm up the terms, and off you go, and you get ready to close.
Okay. And so a lot of these, have, I would say, like a minimum of 60 days for due diligence before you firm up, and then maybe another, 30 days after that to close. Sometimes it's longer, right? So do you have a time limit on the loan?
It's a minimum of 30 days. So we can't lend for less than 30 days. So if you got a due diligence period of less than that, we're probably not the right thing for you, or right product. So, but our maximum right now is 12 months, and that's until we really get running. And then there really isn't a maximum. Seeing a due diligence period, I've only seen a due diligence period of 12 months once ever, in all my time in this industry. Most, as you said, most due diligence periods are 60 to 90 days.
Okay. All right. That's awesome. And are you able to share like the terms on here, or do they are they flexible? Do they change, or are they kind of just set?
So as of now, they're set as of the day of recording. We have, our lender fee starts at 2.74%, and interest is calculated monthly. So it starts at, I think, 1.25% per month, all the way up to 1.75% per month. So not too bad, like we had a loan on Friday to close. It was $150,000 deposit. The investor only had to put up something like $6,500 instead of $150,000. So if you're doing deals, especially if you're getting into a good deal right away, that $6,500 is nothing. Like, this guy's buying 100+ units, so that's almost a rounding error once that building is optimized. So it's good. It's the solution you didn't even know existed.
Yeah, not that I know of, but I don't think anyone else is offering that in the market. Like, there's prom notes, but like not specifically for the deposit. Obviously there's, private lending out there, but I think you guys are probably the only one that I'm aware of anyways, that offer this service. Do you know?
Yeah, well, I think there are others that do it, but we're new. We're trying to solve problems, and our tagline is make better offers, do more deals, and that really is true. Like, if you're not limited by deposit capital, you can make as many offers as you want. You can underwrite more deals, and as a result, you're going to find more and better deals, which means there's more prosperity and cash flow coming for you. And for our industry colleagues, realtors, mortgage brokers, that's more deals for them as well. So it really is win-win-win for everybody.
Mm-hmm, for sure. Now, geographically, what do you cover? Is it Ontario only? Is it Canada? Do you expand past that? Maybe just give us that answer for both of the businesses. So your law firm, and then also your deposit structure. What's the business called for the deposit structure?
Upfront Capital.
All right, perfect. So the Upfront Capital one, and then your law firm.
Okay. Upfront is all of Canada. Doesn't matter where. It doesn't even matter what the deal is. Like, I want it to be a very good deal so that our borrowers can go and do great things and do more projects and make more money. But ultimately, it doesn't matter whether it's a good deal or bad deal, because we get paid back before it goes firm. So it doesn't matter what the asset is, whether it's shares, whether it's assets, doesn't matter. So it's all of Canada for Upfront. For the law firm, it's all of Ontario. So when it comes to real estate transactions, we can help in Ontario. When it comes to contractual and corporate work, there's a little bit more flexibility across the country. So if you're setting up corporate structures and you've got, buildings that you're buying in New Brunswick or BC, we can probably help get your corporate structure set up. And if you're doing contracts, like joint venture contracts, in other provinces, we can also assist with those under some certain circumstances.
Do you do any purchases, for people living in Ontario, but like, let's just say in the US or different countries? Like, are you guys set up for that? And then so that's question number one. And then question number two, because I know I have some students in this category, is like they might have money across, from different countries that they want to bring in and do some JVs, or some, corporations bringing in some investors overseas. Do you guys have any experience, and do you cover that?
Yeah, so we work with a provider in the US to create corporate structures in both countries so that you can invest, investor can invest in the US and not get double taxed. So investing in the US has a ton of advantages. Number one, you've got a ton of jurisdictions that are much more landlord friendly than, say, Ontario is. And cash flow can be much greater in a number of places in the US. Not really your California, but more like Alabama, Tennessee, Florida, that sort of thing. So we work with a provider there. We set up the Canadian side, and they set up the US side, and then get you going into an asset, whether you're flipping, whether you're buying multifamily, whatever it might be. So we don't help with the transactions themselves. That's outside of our competence, as we'd say in law. But we certainly have the connections to the people that are there and doing it, and we get you set up on the Canadian side so that you're not paying more than you need to in terms of tax. Now, your second question was about, remind me again.
Overseas money coming into some partnerships to purchase properties.
Yeah, so that's a really tricky proposition these days with the ban on foreign buyers.
Correct.
So,
but I think that is only up to 3 units, unless I'm wrong. But I thought it was only 3 units, unless.
right. So that's the workaround. So we can't be doing flips unless they're 3 units or more than 3 units. And we've got to make sure that we have proper contracts in place. As a real estate investor, if you're bringing in foreign money, then you've got to make sure that your foreign money partner has a lawyer here, and that way they're cognizant of the laws here and how that works in terms of how to pair up money and expertise in order to invest. And it definitely has to be 4 units or more.
Okay. All right. Okay, so that's good. So it sounds like you could almost do everything that we would need, and do you do wills and estates and stuff like that for investors too? Like, do you include that into your?
So here's what we're doing. So we are slowly building our all-in sort of package, including wills and estates. That's a little bit down the road, but ultimately what we're trying to do is make life really simple for investors. So we're working on a couple of different ways to take some of the jobs away from the investor that are sort of tedious, and taking them on ourselves so that we can help our clients, prosper and spend less time having to do relatively menial things. Now, setting up a will is not necessarily menial. It's pretty important. And that's coming, but we're not there yet.
Okay, that's good. So you're also working as our go-to for our midterm rental properties, all the legal stuff. I think a lot of midterm investors that are going that route are investors in general that will need all the services regardless. Anything specific about midterm from a legal standpoint that we should be reaching out to you for?
Well, couple of things. Number one, I'm generally recommending people invest in a corporate structure. This is the only tried and true way to make sure that your personal assets are separate from your business assets, and each business asset is separated from each other business asset. So it is a holistic conversation, right? I can't just sit here and say you've got to incorporate and you've got to have a structure in place, because that would be irresponsible. I know that there are costs to get that going. There are costs to maintain those annually. There are different tax considerations. So what we want to do is have a conversation with the parties that matter on making this decision. There are 2 others, your tax advisor and your mortgage broker. So generally what I want to do is I want to have a meeting with you and all of your advisors, the mortgage and the tax side. Then we can have a conversation so you fully understand as a client what you're getting into. And when we start to understand your priorities, that then the 3 of us can sort of put together a proposal to help you meet your objectives. So that's number 1. Number 2, understanding the Residential Tenancies Act and its application to midterm rentals, and more importantly, how to strategically sort of set yourself apart from the RTA and the landlord tenant board. And that really comes in tenant or guest due diligence, right? Understanding why these people or why this person wants my unit and what is their exit strategy. If they have an exit strategy, then we are a lot less concerned with the Residential Tenancies Act. Not that we're not going to follow it, but the applicability of the Residential Tenancies Act, while still there, we can be less concerned about because our tenants or guests are going to leave and have a reason to leave, as opposed to a long-term rental. So understanding that you can't escape the Residential Tenancies Act on a midterm rental, but that with good diligence, due diligence on a guest and tenant, we can offset some of those concerns is of paramount importance.
Yeah. And we also have paralegals who have, I guess you guys probably work very closely with, created guest terms agreements, right? And so these are not like your standard Ontario leases. These are specific and don't mention tenants in there or, anything related that could probably be cross-referenced as that. But, I think from a case law standpoint, I think it was June 17th, there was a 10-month Airbnb guest that was deemed to be a commercial and not part of the RTA. That, along with, I believe there was another case law in December of 2020 that worked in our favor for these types of things. So, and just to go back, obviously you mentioned the screening. Screening is so important. Most of them should have, a really good reason with a start and an exit, but also ideally a primary residence that is separate. So a lot of my guests, as an example, are, going through an insurance claim or renovations on their primary house, or, they sold and they're moving and there's like a gap in between. Those are likely going to be, from my experience in the last few years, the majority of the tenants that are going to come through. What we screen out are tenants looking for a place to rent that were prior tenants. That's usually where people will get themselves in trouble. And so going back to your screening, just really understanding what the reason is for moving, and when they're leaving and how long they're staying. We've got tenants right now, or I shouldn't say tenants, guests right now in one of our units, and they're actually in town for a film. And they're doing the makeup for all the actors and stuff like that with a start and end date. So we have a lot of that. And again, everybody's going to have, different types of guests depending on where they are, but it's still going to be the majority of, homeowners or somebody living somewhere else and they have a purpose for coming and exiting. And then just things like not giving keys and doing keypads, all of that stuff are things that you need to set yourself up properly. Because it's still very gray right now, right? Like it's still gray. If you place the wrong one in there, could you potentially end up in trouble? It's possible. Anything's possible. Even putting a one-day Airbnb guest in there, if they want to play the system, it's the wrong guest, you're going to be in the same situation.
Yeah, that's right. And so it's, you said it, screening is so important, and really understanding your business model and sort of putting the focus on how to find proper guests and then meeting those guests' needs. That's the key.
Absolutely. Awesome. So the next part of the podcast is lightning round. I'm going to ask you 5 questions that every guest gets the same ones. You're going to give me the first answer that comes to mind. You ready?
Let's do it.
All right. Question number 1, what's your favorite real estate investing book?
Cash Flow Quadrant.
Okay. All right. That one is a good one. Everybody says Rich Dad, Poor Dad, but I think that one is almost like that next level to it.
Yeah.
Number 2, not necessarily real estate related. I don't know if you listen to podcasts, but if you do you have a favorite one?
Business School by Shawn Quigg.
Okay. All right. Number 3, what do you do for fun?
Golf. I curl. I go to the dog park. I spend time with my fiance. And I like to water ski.
Okay. All right. Some cool things in there for sure. Number 4, if you lost everything tomorrow, all your money, all your assets, how would you start again?
Rely on my experience to raise private capital and get back to it.
All right. And final question. If somebody has $50,000, they want to get started doing something, how would you recommend they spend that 50 grand?
Mentorship. Coaching and mentorship are two different things. Mentorship is someone who's been there and can advise you. And so I would recommend mentorship.
Okay. All right. Thanks for playing the lightning round. Great answers. Shawn, what's the best place for my listeners to reach out and contact you?
The best way, I mean, you can find us on Instagram and Facebook and TikTok, Prosper Us Law. You can reach me by email if you want to get in touch with me directly, Shawn@prosperouslaw.ca. But sending me messages on socials is probably the easiest way to get a hold of me.
Okay, amazing. Thank you so much for, your partnership, working with us as well, and all the work, and also coming on the podcast and sharing your knowledge. We'll have to have you back because there's so many things we could dive into. So we'll definitely have you back again for a future episode. Thanks so much.
Thanks, Sarah.
Thanks so much for listening to Where Should I Invest with your host, Sarah Larbi. Make sure to listen in next time. We'll catch you on the next episode of Where Should I Invest?